Welcome to the Investor's Guide to Joy, where we turn complex business transitions into clear, actionable strategies for growth, wealth, and freedom. Today, we're going to go through specifically some things that you need to know as a business owner. Did you know traditionally 1 in 20 businesses actually sell? There's a new rule coming out with SBA on June 1st of 2025 that you need to know if you're looking to exit or purchase. Whether you're looking at scaling up, thinking of selling, or just want to bulletproof your business for the future, today's episode is going to go through that and more with Jimmy, who is an expert in business structure and exit planning. So we have a great conversation from my experience as well as his to uncover the critical changes, common pitfalls, and ultimately the transformational moves that you need to do to ensure that you have the right business moving forward. If you're looking to buy or ultimately build a business, it's imperative that you understand a number of different changes that are coming through June 1st, as well as different things that you should be aware of as you're going through your business buying or business scaling endeavor, really. So today, Jimmy and I are going to go through a number of different things that are going to come through in changes, as well as just services and experiences that he's had. We'll have a good conversation on what those things might be, how to prepare for them, how to overcome them, and also how to completely avoid them. So Jimmy, one thing that's coming down for June 1st and some of these changes with SBA is kind of like sponsor equity, right? So the reinstatement of a strict 10% equity injection requirement for all complete changes of ownership. I mean, what have you really found in terms of ownership or how people are kind of like buying businesses through, your core or your just kind of career and experience for the companies that you work with?
Well, in terms of them having equity or injecting capital into their business, I've seen it, in multiple ways. Where it just depends on how they're structured and what they have in assets, and we see that many times, they're not structured correctly. They don't have the financial showing the right numbers, and that's where we become very strategic in helping them be able to uncover that, right, and be able to find where that capital is at and the equity, so to speak. Because traditionally, businesses, from my arena, I speak to small, medium-sized businesses, right, and there's a lot of weaknesses in that arena where they might buy a lot of things, they might have a lot of stuff, but it's not in the right columns. They don't showcase the profits that they need to show to be able to show that equity, to show that strength in their balance in their balance sheets. So, I believe having somebody, a professional, be able to look at things for them with another set of eyes that's going to highlight those weaknesses is imperative and super important.
Yeah. So what kind of professional is that in terms of, looking at kind of structuring or entity either formation or just like ongoing entity resilience?
Well, you need to have, there's different types of CPAs, right? A CPA and having
Yes.
a designation as a CPA, and I'm not anti, don't get me wrong. I just think that it's just
I'm
like,
anti-bad CPA and
right,
anti who don't have services. Like I'm of the belief, like, yes, there's the, tax kind of service that you can go in just as a
right,
W-2 seasoned professional. And then you have the CPA, hey, kind of do it for me. But
right.
yeah, we're
But
specifically talking about the
it,
CPAs who have the tax strategy and other
yes.
experiences that work specifically with business owners. So
And that's
that's
what
what
I'm
I'm.
talking. Having a team to be able to start talking about maybe more finite areas like cost segregation and how you
Mhm.
can uncover the different nuances that go with being able to defer or offset different taxes. So having a strategist, and people on your team that are looking at this holistically in a much different way than just being able to follow tax code and getting your papers filed on time is different than somebody who's looking at your your numbers over the next year, over the next 5 years. What do we need to purchase? What do we need to do? Like all these different strategies that come into play that ultimately affect that bottom line when we're talking about growth inside your business, and exit strategies for, if I need to sell, and
Mhm.
I took the time from the beginning to set myself up right, my exit strategy is beautiful. But if I
Yeah.
don't, because I'm trying to save money on taxes, and that's the wrong advice because your CPA said, well, we need to do this, this, and this to cut your tax. well, if somebody had advised me better from the get go on how I could offset the tax over the course of the year in
Hmm.
better strategies, then I
Hmm.
don't have to forsake some of the other areas of my business when I do have to exit. So it's very important to understand that I think many small and medium sized businesses fall into the I guess the cost of doing it right, and so they'll go with the cheapest alternative, which sometimes will actually be the costliest alternative in the big scope of it. So I think that's a very important part that's missed by a lot of companies.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And something I see a lot of as well is just that kind of misalignment of the today for the tomorrow. And it's the idea of like how you do something is how you do everything. And so fundamentally, if you're able to focus on the idea of, hey, one day to sell, as well as if you're in a path to selling, then having the right people with the right information to then lead you into the right sort of expectations and process so that you don't have some of those snags. There's some statistics that say essentially 1 out of every 20 businesses sell. That's not to say all can't be sold, but it's just to say that they're not all poised in such a way to be sold. And then those that actually are, there's that kind of one that people actually buy, right? And there's a number of different nuances to that. Let's go to another piece that's coming up here in June. So partial standby notes. So no longer permitted to count towards the buyer's equity injection. So seller notes are only allowed as equity if they're on full standby for the life of the loan. And even then, they may only represent up to half of the required equity injection. So ultimately, if you're looking to purchase a business, you can no longer take that seller note, put it in as an equity injection without them being on full standby. I mean, I personally think this is a good thing. I've seen a lot of individuals who are looking to say buy the business, right? And business buying is not inherently bad, but ultimately having that seller to be on the hook for the entire loan, I think is a good thing for both the business buyer and the business seller. What are your feedback thoughts? I mean, do you have concerns on this? Do you think this is going to be a beneficial thing for both buyers and sellers?
Listen, seller financing is needed. We're in an environment with rising interest rates that make commercial and or selling a business extremely difficult in the traditional format, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think that we need to adopt these policies, and I think it's just being able to adapt to the changes of what's needed, right? I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's something that's necessary as we
Mhm.
develop, ways in being able to buy more businesses. Seller
Mhm.
financing is needed. It's definitely a good tool. I've used it in the past and it works.
Yeah.
So I think it's just we're going to see a lot of these things happening, though, Paul. I mean, let's be real. We can't think that, especially in a new administration as aggressive as it is, that we're
Mhm.
not going to see more things happening like this. And
Sure.
as a business owner myself, right, I got to be ready for these things and understand where the parameters are so that I can maneuver the choppy waters in the best way.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just part of evolving inside the business community and understanding what these pieces are for you.
What do you think in terms of then the seller who now realizes that they're going to have to stand by for the life of the loan, right? That then means they're on the hook and can no longer do a 6 month kind of exit engagement and then
Sure.
call it a day. It's really going to also change like how people retire is the other
Right.
thing. So for that individual who's then thinking like, wow, my retirement plans changed in terms of timeline or expectation, like what are maybe two pieces of like tactical advice that you would give them to then understand or just kind of go through these new changes that are coming through on June 1st?
So that's a great question because I think when somebody comes to me to sell their business, knowing this ahead of time is like I can already foresee that. Look, if I guide you in this direction, this is going to happen. So this is our plan B and plan. So you need to start having some other outlets to be able to start thinking outside the box, right? Because if this is a reality, then what is our backup plan? To offset this what eventual what could happen, right? Well, what could happen is if you're on the hook for this, then you're gonna have to retake this business back, right? Or whatever that circumstance is. What are we doing proactively for this seller to be able to have other plans in place to help them move on with their life, right? So they're not so worried about the doomsday, right? Because not every company is going to go down that rabbit hole, right?
Mhm.
So let's not focus on the negative, let's focus on the positive, and that actually opens up conversations as an advisor and a mentor or a strategist to be able to help these people in other ways. Because if you're
Mhm.
exiting, you're obviously going to have to think of what you're going to be doing in the future, right? What are these
Sure.
plans? And if this is something that could disrupt those plans, then hey, it's no different than saying, well, I want to go to Florida, and you're going to possibly have a higher cost in Florida because of your insurance, or there's calamities that can happen in Florida that might not happen in another part of the United States. So you prepare for these things, and you have somebody that makes you and helps you see the light and look at all the cards on the table.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that's coming through is with rollover seller equity. So if a seller retains equity post close, even below 20%, they must personally guarantee the full SBA loan for 2 years following disbursement. Similar type of thing, right? Any feedback and thoughts from this?
20% is a lot, but I mean, putting that reserve and kind of hedging on that so that you're protected, is a smart move. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
be able to just allocate and put those funds in a safe space as part of your exit strategy, right? So your exit is not like before. It's going to be a little elongated, maybe a little time tested, but I mean, you'll get there. I mean, it's just kind of part of this system that we have to adapt to.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years following meant not that long of a time. Ideally, with a good, healthy, profitable business, especially if you're needing to stay on because you do some sort of seller note. Couldn't foresee any wildly difficult issues, but
And
again, at
this
least,
is why, Paul, this is why we're so adamant about going back and really think about it. Everybody that comes to sell their business, they have a
yeah,
number in mind, right? That
yeah,
number, I don't know where they pulled it from. Sometimes they don't even know, right?
sure.
This is where we become very effective in doing what we do to really evaluate the business how it should, find the weaknesses in their books and everything to be able to cover these things, right? Because if we don't price this thing properly and put the proper structures in selling with the notes and everything, this can
Mhm.
all be handled through proper evaluation and pricing and selling it right? We're covering ourselves in different areas to
Yeah.
offset these parameters are hurting us.
Yeah, I mean, it's traditionally it's just some educational content of like, hey, if you're in these type of industries, this is what the multiple is. Therefore, someone basically does napkin math if they look at their finances once in a blue moon, and it's like, oh, well, based on a 4 multiple, then it's going to be this, right? And so,
Correct.
it's
Correct.
just a Zillow type of situation where you have some of this information and it could be advantageous. But a big thing that I've ultimately found, saying from someone who's previously been in commercial real estate, is like it's not the same thing. Like you could buy two different properties, one that has old rusty pipes and one that has brand new pipes, but it's evaluated based on the square footage, the location, beds and bath, essentially, right, and comps. It's not in the inner workings of the home. That is
Correct.
what a business is evaluated on and what ultimately is purchased. If you don't have systems and processes and you just have people, well, then you have a riskier business. And so if I then was going to acquire and you have the relationships with the customers, you go away, like, so essentially do the relationships with the customers,
Right.
regardless of how much verbal guarantee that you can give me that they're not going to. That's not, a real business, if you will. It's more of
Right.
a hamster wheel. And
Right.
so it's an important thing that I've seen with the valuation and talking to people who actually have that understanding and capacity can build those systems, processes, and even awareness of what that even looks like. Like, what is the definition of great? What is the definition of good? And then where are you, right? And how does that then fit in? And as you're looking to then sell, to your point as well, what does that look like from a wealth management and financial planning kind of standpoint as well? Because even if below 20%, the seller's still retaining some sort of equity, then them being on certainly makes sense. oftentimes I've heard of more people trying to like clearly break, right? Where it's not maintain equity, but certainly if you built something for the ground up, could certainly see how there's a potential where you'd want to maintain some sort of equity because of your belief that the buyer would then take it to the next level. But
Right.
I've had some interesting conversations, and I'm curious if you have kind of had the same, or maybe do these services where have found that business owners sometimes want to sell because they've reached their best and not the best, right? So said
Right.
another way, like we'll bring in fractional, C-suite type individuals either directly or we just give access, right? Because we'll have weekly or monthly calls with these types of individuals. And what we'll really find is like these business owners realize like, hey, I've been the CEO of this $5 million company, but this being a $50 million company, like that's just not me. I don't have that skills, experience, interest, et cetera. And so
Yeah.
then by bringing in some of these fractional C-suite type of individuals, that then allows to go to that next level. And instead of selling, it's more of rejuvenating. And instead of having someone buy, it's more of grow. And so it's just a different way to take that business from one area, to another. So curious what you've seen for how, business owners think of selling, because it's not always a black and white, like, yes, sell. I've seen it again more as this like organic piece where it could be sold or it could be grown. Ultimately, the business owner just wants a change. So it's figuring out
I,
what that kind of
I agree
is.
with you 100%. There's two types of people, right? When we're talking to them, there's situational things that are forcing a sale. I get it, but there's
Sure.
many that come through that are just not structured in a way for growth, and so they feel
Mhm.
like they hit their wall, and they're better off just selling, getting it, and going in another direction, right? Instead
Yeah.
of changing the mindset of how we could do this with some more help, right? With different type of help, right? Where because you got to be real, these people don't all have the knowledge, right? And especially in the arenas that I work with in small and medium sized businesses that have many times worn all the hats in their business, and so they feel they're at their capacity. Maybe many times the stress load of carrying on that burden for so long has got them to
Yeah.
the point where they're like they don't even love their business anymore, and it's not because they don't love what they do. It's just they have so many things. So by bringing fractionals to the picture and being able to advise them and help them see things that they haven't been able to, I think
Mhm.
that's huge. I think that's such a huge plus in bringing that. It's helped us immensely over the years. I've been in business for 23 years, and let me tell you, my biggest mistakes was when I was doing everything myself. When I started, fanning it out and bringing on other experts to help, I didn't have to hire one person full time for, $120,000 a year. It wasn't feasible, but I could do it in fractions. And that was actually a godsend. And I think as we start diving into that arena more and helping clients being able to see things in a different perspective, it
Yeah.
it changes things. And now I always say, there's the we always want to help our clients. Our fiduciary should always be to help our clients get to the best of who they are and what they
Mhm.
do, right? And if that situation arose that you don't need to sell, we just need to pivot and do this, or that, it
Yeah.
gives them kind of a sigh of relief that there is maybe some hope that things can be better for them. And we've changed companies on account of that, of changing the perspective of how they're doing business and how we can help them. And it didn't cost them a lot. But part of capital raising and doing some of the things that we do is to
Mhm.
help them see with a new pair of glasses what they should be doing, right? As opposed
Sure.
to how they're doing it now. If it's not working right now, it's for this and this reason. And this is what we propose, right? Here's a
Mhm.
solution that we think over time will help, and obviously have the proper metrics in place to help them see
Sure.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, these are good insights, especially with some of these changes coming out for June 1st, especially on selling and just being aware of how to grow and understand more of your business. We'll definitely dive in more in another episode talking about, buying and building as well. And we'll have everyone look at the show notes for information on how to reach out to you and connect with you more for what you do.
Definitely. I appreciate all you having me on. There's always so much good stuff to talk about. And I mean, every day there's more things coming out of the woodwork. So it's good to stay abreast on everything.
Literally every day. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Jimmy, for coming on.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.